Hello, and welcome to episode 24 of the Two Button Crew podcast. This is Scott, and I'm joined by one co-host today. How are you doing, Glen?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Good. Thanks for being my faithful podcast co-host. It looks like you've been on every single Two Button Crew podcast.
No, not
No?
quite. There were two.
Okay.
So there's one where my audio got corrupted while trying to
That's
save the
right.
file, and I had to be edited out. Though, interestingly, if you listen to it, there is one reference to something I said, but there's no context to it. Like at one point, Simeon says something along the lines of, "I agree with Glen on this
Yeah.
matter," but
Well,
I'm not in the
maybe just in
episode because I
general.
was edited out. So. And then there's I think the one on Kickstarter.
Yes, that's it.
I wasn't able to make it because I was spending the weekend with my family due to graduating from grad school.
Yeah, that sounds like a horrible excuse.
Yeah, well, I remember you didn't tell me ahead of time that you were recording it without me. It's just sort of like, well, I can't make it this weekend, and then it's like, okay, I'm just going to record it and then tell Glenn that I recorded it.
Oh, yes. Back then, we were on a monthly podcast release schedule. Now it's whenever we can make it. So thank you again for being here and for outlining the episode. It's a great topic about rumors, hype, and disappointment, which should all be very familiar to all Nintendo fans, especially this year with E3 being canceled and a pretty slow trickle of first-party releases and news. We're recording this at the end of August, where we just got through with two different presentations, a partner showcase, and I don't know what the other one was called, Indie
World.
Yeah, so they're
You
always
think they got that
changing the
name
branding
from
around.
Space World? Like it's a reference to that?
I think that is a more satisfying option than they just pulled it out of their booties. So I like your instinct there. But we just got done with two largely disappointing presentations. On Slack, our general consensus was meh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mehs all around.
I mean, if you were wondering why we didn't do Two Button Crew directs for those, it's just like there wasn't anything interesting for us to talk about.
Yeah, we could have gone live, taken turns saying meh, and then shut down the stream, but we figured we'd save you a little bit of time.
So what do you think about this announcement?
Yeah. So end of August, beginning of September, we're still waiting for whatever the planned E3 presentation was going to be, if it even exists anymore in the world of the coronavirus and the apocalypse, as you talked about in the last episode. So it's an odd time for Nintendo fans. Yeah, I listened to that. You and Simeon did a good job. That was fun. So let's talk about being disappointed, which is a great topic for today for multiple reasons, isn't it?
Yeah. We've been dealing with it a lot as Nintendo fans, and I don't know if I should give too much inside baseball, but we're recording this as a fallback because what we were going to record today, the plan for that fell through.
Yeah, so that's disappointment.
Yeah.
All right, Glenn, where should we hit on first?
All right, so first and foremost, I think we need to establish what kind of rumors we're talking about. So we're not talking about like urban legends, like the old L is real. What were the numbers? It's like 2407 or something.
2047, yeah.
Yeah, so we're not talking about that or getting the Triforce and Ocarina of Time or any of those. Yeah, you notice how many of those are from like the N64 era?
I did notice, and I also noticed that our L is Real video has been getting a ton of traction lately. Ever since the Nintendo Giga Leak that showed plans for Luigi to be playable in Mario 64, people have been digging up our old episode we made about the L is Real and commenting on it, so that's been fun.
Yeah, interesting. I think part of the reason that those or like N64 era is that once the internet really started taking off, it's been a lot easier to share information, like debunk it and have And especially with YouTube, where you can have shows like what was it? It was originally it's Game Sleuth, but Game Trailers had a series that was Pop Fiction. That's what it was. That really good series. They don't really Game Sleuth. They haven't released a new episode in 10 months, but I recommend you go back and watch both of those if you're into that sort of thing. But so those aren't really all that prevalent anymore because of the internet, and there isn't as such there isn't really a whole lot to talk about there. What we are talking about, or going to be talking about, is rumors, and these are way more common now in the age of the internet, because anyone can go onto a forum now and claim, I have insider information from contacts in Nintendo that, so we're talking about rumors about announcements and games that might be coming out. And, there was some of that back in the day, but, like the Super Mario 128, where people would take things Miyamoto said out of context, or maybe he misspoke or whatever. But it seems like we're hearing a lot of rumors here, especially considering that people are desperate for information.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I've really come to hate the online culture around Nintendo in the last couple of years. I'll be quick to point out that Two Button Crew fans are an exception, because they are legitimately some of the kindest and best people on the internet that Simeon and I had the pleasure to run into in our long stint of making episodes every day. Just a faithful following that really had their head on straight. But in general, Twitter, comment sections on blogs like Go Nintendo or Nintendo Life, it got pretty ridiculous. And
oh yeah, and if you want to know where it's really bad, I went on to 4chan for the first time here recently. Because there was the wiki that hosts the rules that our tabletop RPG podcast uses went down, and it's kind of an extension of 4chan.
Yeah.
And so I can't really repeat some of the things that were said, but someone just asks a simple question like, "Hey, does anyone know what happened to the wiki?" And immediately it was just a deluge of insults.
Yeah. But also with just reporting, we have one journalist left in the gaming industry, and it's Jason Schreier. And other than that, it just feels like fanboys that will report on anything, any rumor fabricated by anybody with a Twitter account, and these things will just get shared, and they get clicked on too, which I think is why anytime someone says, this person on Twitter just said a Nintendo Direct is coming up on Friday, it's reported as a rumor, which I think is just irresponsible. There's a lack of respect for sources in the gaming industry these days.
Yeah, and if you want to report on a rumor, I can kind of understand that, but you probably should do some actual research into it and give an assessment. It's based on these factors, here's why it's unlikely, or it might be possible, but don't get your hopes up or whatever. But no, instead it's just kind of people playing telephone.
Those articles used to sound something like, a source close to the issue reported anonymously that a Nintendo announcement would be coming up in a couple of days. And now it's somebody posted something online. Yeah.
So, yeah, it is kind of annoying. But I guess that leads into our next point is, how do we approach rumors, and what do we think, how do we react to when we hear a rumor, and how do we process that information? What do we do with that?
You and I?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I try to not get my hopes up. If anything from following Nintendo has been taught to me over the years, it's keep the expectations low. So whereas I would used to join in with the general Nintendo fan going okay, this is the one. This is the Nintendo Direct where my favorite character is going to be announced for Smash Bros. Or finally the next Metroid game is going to come in this February Nintendo Direct. Or a Mother game is finally going to be localized. It's those are all pretty unfair to expect. And Here's the other thing that really helps me. I think of a Nintendo Direct for what it is. It's just a company marketing to me. It's not a chance for all of my dreams to come true. It's not an exciting event in itself to me anymore. A Nintendo Direct is just how this company has chosen to communicate its marketing propositions to me as a customer. And so I don't get excited about the leak or rumor of an announcement for a Nintendo Direct. I don't get excited for an official Nintendo Direct emailed to my inbox by their PR firm. I just wait to see what games they're actually announcing in it. And at that point, I can decide if I want to be excited for those individual games or not. Because just like I wouldn't get excited for a commercial coming on TV for any certain product or anything like that, it is a company trying to sell me things, and a lot of the time I'm not interested in them if they're super Japanese or of one of the many genres that I don't intend to play.
Yeah, I think my general approach is taking everything with a grain of salt. Like, I do pay attention to them just because it's interesting to me what people come up with. But I don't really believe it. It's like, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. Nothing you hear and only half the things you see and all that. So it's one of those things where when I hear it, it's like, okay, now I know not to be surprised if that happens, but I'm still not really expecting it to happen. I just know that that's a possibility now.
Something that has tended to be more correct over the years are console rumors. Those are surprisingly accurate, even though they're a much bigger deal than just an individual game announcement. So sometimes I will look at the console rumors and use those to inform buying decisions. Like, should I buy the 3DS XL? Probably not, because there's rumors about a new model, so I can hold off on that. And I'm in kind of a similar situation with the Switch right now, where I've used over 1,000 hours on my launch Switch, and I could use the V2, the one with it's not bigger battery, but it's bigger battery life because of a more efficient processor. So I've kind of wanted to sell my launch one after buying a new one and transferring it over and stuff. I'm just holding off because there are rumors that a new revision is around the corner, and for whatever reason, those seem more reliable than the game ones.
I would assume because hardware is just innately kind of a bigger endeavor, and so it's probably harder to keep that all under wraps because you have to communicate with the people who produce the hardware and then the people who assemble it, and so it's easier for a memo to slip out. Also, hardware is one of those things that it takes a long time to do hardware. Like I would not be surprised if Nintendo started work immediately on trying to conceptualize the Switch's successor as soon as the Switch came out.
That's historically how they've done every one of them.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and with components coming from multiple manufacturers, that's also a way that information can come out as well. It's so outsourced, so it's hard to prevent all the leaks.
Right. But so when you hear a rumor, does that ruin the surprise if it turns out to be true? Do you think that all the rumors circulating around and paying attention to rumors causes maybe makes it harder to enjoy the surprise announcements and when something good actually does get announced?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember leaked photos from E3 show floors, so you would see all the displays and then tune in for the presentation the next day and kind of already know about everything. I think that Nintendo fans really do themselves a disservice by circulating rumors and leaks, because if you want to be excited about something, I think the most effective way is being surprised. So why are we so bent on ruining surprises for ourselves? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like wanting to open your presents before Christmas. It's like part of the excitement is that you have to wait for a very specific time to do that. So that's one of those things where I never really understood people who are like, just give it to me whenever. It's like, no.
People are pretty uptight about spoilers these days for stories. When a new Star Wars movie comes out or Marvel movie comes out, spoilers are pretty locked down. And I don't know why the same thing isn't true here. I mean, it's a different animal, but shouldn't the sentiment be similar?
Yeah. So this goes back to what I said, is that, I don't really expect rumors to be true, but it does kind of prime me to say, okay, I'm not going to be surprised when this is announced. Mm-hmm. And so that does kind of ruin it. It's like, the rumors were true. Nintendo is making this thing or whatever.
So we can complain about the people that do this and circulate these articles and things like that, but we are responsible for our response, right? So if we want to, are we able to prevent ourselves from being spoiled? For me, that would involve a lot of unfollowing certain people on Twitter, and it would involve not checking websites like the ones I mentioned, the Nintendo blogs that are ran by people that do this full time. And I think that I would be pretty bored because I check those sites multiple times a day. And the Nintendo fandom and the gaming industry, that's my hobby, my main one. So it kind of just comes with the territory. If I was to not check those things to avoid spoilers, I'd be missing out on a lot of other aspects of the fandom, which I just don't think is a sacrifice that I want to make. So unfortunately, I don't think I could really avoid the spoilers without avoiding the fandom as a whole. I mean, that's not even to mention podcasts. The Nintendo podcasts that I listen to, like Nintendo Voice Chat and whatnot at IGN, I mean, rumors are just part of the news cycle and part of the segments of their show. So I think the answer is no for me. What about you?
Well, I don't listen to a ton of podcasts. I don't listen to or really go onto the Nintendo blogs all that often. So
really?
Yeah.
How do you get your news?
Mostly through YouTube. And even then, YouTube, it's one of those things where you'll probably see the headline that says, oh, there's this rumor out. You can avoid listening to the specifics of it because sometimes the video title doesn't really give you a whole lot to go off of. But a lot of times it does. Yeah, a lot of times it does. So I think you can definitely...
channels Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I think you definitely can avoid rumors. Like I said, I do have just kind of a... I don't want to say I listen to it in the sense that I'm actively, it's like, oh, I gotta know what's coming. And it's no, for me, it's just sort of yeah, okay, I've got 2 minutes to spare. What cockamamie story have you come up with this time? It's sort of I don't know. I guess at this point, it's sort of going to those satire sites like the Babylon Bee or the Onion or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But
even channels that used to be historically research based or analysis, like Game Explain, they're just totally into news, and part of that is rumors. Yeah. So are there channels that you go to for just strictly news on Nintendo?
No, not really. If I want to know news, or basically most of the announcements I get are what Nintendo posts on YouTube. I'll see a trailer and it's oh, okay, that looks interesting. Or I'll see a Game Explain video that's suggested to me by YouTube.
Yeah.
So I would say, if you want to stay informed about everything that's going on, no, you can't really avoid it because we, for whatever reason, have decided that rumors are newsworthy.
Yep.
And I'm kind of with you. I don't think that's really right because, that I don't think hearsay should be considered news. You should do some research into stuff and try to establish things, establish the facts.
The other thing it does is sets us up for longer wait cycles. Because the sooner we learn about a product, the longer we have to wait for it. And
Right.
it's been really nice. Nintendo kind of almost shadow dropping some games. I mean, we learned about Samus Returns a couple months before it came out. We learned about Paper Mario the Origami King a couple months before it came out. So that's ideal to me. Just learning about a game and being able to play it in a couple of months without an agonizingly long wait like it has been for Metroid Prime 4 or something like that, I
Or
think
Breath
is
of
a
the
good
Wild
thing.
2.
Exactly. So
Though
I think
Breath of the Wild 2 is fun watching everyone just like wildly speculate about
Yes.
what could possibly happen there. So just the
And of
amount of
course it's
fodder for the like theorizing channels is fun to watch. I admit I keep up with that a lot more than I keep up with actual rumors. It's just like, okay, so what I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel bad. Like I feel like I'm hyping myself up for Breath of the Wild 2, and I know that's what happened with the first one. I was kind of disappointed with the first one. So
And of course, it's going to be a launch game for the Switch Pro with 4K graphics and glasses-free 3D and everything you could ever want. Well, yeah, so I just think, why have the need to learn about a product so early? It's going to be far from complete if we learn about it through a leak or a rumor. And wouldn't it be much better to learn about it just a couple of months before it comes out, and you'll be able to see the trailer and see what it's actually like? Because that way you get your hopes up less about what the product isn't. Imagine if we had been discussing what Paper Mario for the Switch was going to be back in 2019. We would be talking about what kind of partner characters we wanted, what kind of battle system we wanted, and then would have just been completely blindsided by the circular battle system. And I think that the people's taste in their mouth about Paper Mario would be a lot worse than it is now.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. That's one of the things about incomplete information is people have a tendency, and we'll talk about this in a second, but people have a tendency to fill in the blanks
with what they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that actually just leads right into our next point is the nature of hype and disappointment. So why do you think people get hyped for with rumors? It's like hey, some random person who allegedly has a track record said this thing, and then everybody's like, oh, okay, that this is going to happen. And also the fact that like you have a bunch of other people who just sort of jump on the bandwagon, and it's sort of like, well, maybe they just thought that this is a good idea, so if everyone keeps saying it,
yeah,
we kind of convince ourselves that something's true. Like at the time of this recording, there's a rumor going around, I'm sure you've heard it, about a Super Mario 3D collection.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they'll announce it tomorrow, and this will be really out of date, but there's no evidence that it actually exists other than people on the internet saying, I've totally heard that this is real. And it's like, well, where'd you hear that? From some person on Twitter or?
Well, the evidence against it is that Nintendo has consistently been able to put out ports to the Switch at full price. $60 for Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, $60 for Pokken Tournament, $60 for everything coming from the Wii U. And now the expectation is that they're going to just generously pack in some of Mario's best games ever, remaster them into HD, and sell them all for one low price. It's kind of ridiculous. The only other time we've gotten something like that, All-Stars, was on Wii, and those were 8-bit and 16-bit games, just completely old. Although, now that I say that, I do remember a fun fact that Super Mario Sunshine is older now than Super Mario Bros. Was when Sunshine came out. So, I guess the games they're talking about bundling are pretty old, but I still think that we'll be ripped off more than that. To answer your question about why we get hyped and disappointed. I'll go back to a video Simeon and I made 5 years ago almost, which is still very relevant, about Nintendo Directs and overhype. And Simeon said that he thinks a lot of hype just comes from fans not understanding the way Nintendo works. So they are a Japanese company. They are a weird company. They're a very conservative company that plays things safe. But all the time as Nintendo fans in North America, we think we understand the obvious choice that they should make. They should obviously put Shovel Knight in Smash Bros. They should obviously announce the next Metroid game.
I mean, he is, just not as a playable character.
Well, it would be an obvious choice for him to be a playable character. And Simeon points out that a lot of times they just do things for publicity. They go with Corrin in Smash Bros. Instead because they want to promote Fire Emblem, or just because Sakurai is a Fire Emblem fanboy. Or they put in Cloud because that's going to get more people from different platforms to come over and play their game on Nintendo systems. So, or they'll just do something completely off the wall like Wii U because they want to ride on the back of the Wii's success instead of doing something new and original. So he says that Nintendo is going to surprise us, and that's not necessarily in a good way. Nintendo is going to be old-fashioned, which is true. They've been in the gaming industry basically since it was conceived, but they're over 140 years old as a company. Nintendo is going to go out on a limb that will probably collapse in an embarrassing manner, and fans just tend to have unrealistic expectations overall. So those were Simeon's thoughts on it 5 years ago. I think they still ring true.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's one of the things you touched on there is there's a lot of wishful thinking that goes on with Nintendo fans. Nintendo is one of those. There's kind of a mystery, sort of a mystique, if you will, to Nintendo because they have this weird. You say they're a very conservative company. Really, they have this weird duality where they're like super conservative in some regards, and then they'll just go completely out on a limb.
Yeah, they will. I think it depends on how they're doing in the market. Like, they get successful and comfortable and then play conservative. But then when their plan isn't working out, like GameCube or Wii U, they're like, all right, we have to invent something now.
You say GameCube like it's conservative. The GameCube, if you look at the actual games, it was a weird time for Nintendo. Like Super Mario Sunshine, if you line it up with the other Mario games, it's a weird game.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure the GameCube.
I was thinking console-wise. I was thinking GameCube is a conservative console, and then they really branched out, creating the Wii with motion controls.
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
The Wii U wasn't enough of a risk, and they had to do a lot more research and development to make it something successful in the form of the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think definitely, that's a fair assessment.
Well, I have this vision in my mind that I've tried to tell people, and some people agree with me, some people don't. But I think every other Nintendo console is revolutionary, and the ones in between those are iterative. So, see if you agree with this philosophy overall. NES, revolutionary. It was having arcade games in your home. People went wild for it. The SNES was an iteration of that, where they introduced better graphics and more buttons on the controller. The Nintendo 64 was revolutionary because it brought 4-player multiplayer, a crazy controller. It took us into the third dimension with polygonal graphics. That was revolutionary. The GameCube was an iteration where it was, again, 4-player multiplayer, better graphics, more buttons on the controller, but didn't really introduce a new way to play. The Wii introduced a new way to play. It was revolutionary because of motion controls and bringing in a whole new audience to gaming. The Wii U was an iteration, as the name suggests, of the Wii, where it brought better graphics with the jump to HD, more buttons on the controller, and more ways to play, but not really a new way to play. You could even play with the old Wii controllers and everything. And the Switch was revolutionary because it merged handheld and console gaming and changed the way that we play. So that's my thoughts. I think that the next Nintendo console will be an iteration on the Switch because they have a successful formula, so they'll probably just improve on what they have.
Yeah, probably. I think that's a fair assessment. When you explain it like that, it makes a lot of sense. Do you think that holds true with the Game Boys and the handheld line, or?
Probably not. I think that the ones that are revolutionary are each time the name changes, and then they just have a slew of minor console iterations.
I mean, if you don't count the Game Boy Color, if you lump that in with the Game Boy, then it would be Game Boy and Game Boy Color, then Game Boy Advance, which is the iteration, then the DS, which would be the revolutionary thing with the touchscreen, then the 3DS, which is an iteration, then the Switch.
Okay. Yeah. Don't forget the Game & Watches, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess maybe those... If you count Game & Watch, then that would break the pattern, because Game & Watch was revolutionary, and then you have the Game Boy, which was also revolutionary.
Yeah. Pretty close, though. So I know I've already talked a little bit about how I manage expectations with thinking of Nintendo Directs as basically marketing and stuff like that, but what other tips can we give people who are tired of being disappointed?
Well, I'd say the first thing is be realistic. I don't think that Nintendo's going to release a new open world Chibi Robo game, especially given the state of their developer Skip. They seem to be I don't think we've gotten word that they've officially closed down, but it looks kind of that way. So, keep in mind what's realistic. So some series just don't sell well historically, so they're probably not going to get a sequel. So, we haven't seen Kid Icarus in a long time. We haven't seen F-Zero in a long time. It would be great. Yeah, Punch-Out. It would be great if we saw new games in those series, but, don't... It's been like anywhere between 5 years and almost 2 decades for a lot of those games. So
have a little bit more of a business mindset. Like, think about what makes financial sense for Nintendo.
Right.
I mean, I'm kind of shocked that Metroid is still a franchise. If you look at those sales, I mean, for example, the best Metroid games sell 1 million. And Animal Crossing sold 22 million on the Switch in 3 months. So for them to cater to the Metroid fan base is kind of an act of grace in my mind. Like, the people that play Metroid, the most core of hardcore Nintendo fans, love it as a series. But I don't think it makes financial sense for them to have been working on Metroid Prime 4 this long and to scrap the development of it. I mean, I think that's just thanks to them having enough money to throw around and not worry about the return as much.
Yeah. Honestly, I've been going back, looking at the Chibi Robo series. Before Paper Mario came out, I was replaying the GameCube game, and honestly, when I look back, it's being realistic is great, but it doesn't always work with Nintendo, like you said, with Metroid. I'm looking back and it's the Chibi Robo series has 5 games in it.
Yeah.
I mean, for such a weird series that really has only a cult following and a small one at that, it's honestly shocking to me that the series got 5 games in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have a couple more tips too. So one would be player backlog. Stop being so concerned about what is being developed and what's coming out each month, and eliminate that backlog. I've been doing that all of 2019 because we podcasted about it, and because there have been so few releases from Nintendo. So I picked up the big ones like Animal Crossing and Paper Mario, but I have been mostly playing games that I purchased and just never got around to, and that is a lot of fun. There's so much out on Switch. I think I have 15 games on my wish list right now, and you probably have at least that. And
actually, my wish list is pretty small.
I was about to clarify that I was speaking to the listener.
Okay.
I've seen people on Facebook sharing that they have 250 games on their wish list. So the production of new games could stop, and we would still be set. So just practicing a little bit of contentment with let me play the games I've already bought. Let me enjoy those. Let me play my backlog. play some interesting things on Nintendo Switch Online. I beat Super Metroid for the first time just this year because there was not much coming out. So that's a lot of fun. And my second tip is like it. Get another console. If you have the financial means to be a multi-platform gamer, that can really help with disappointment in Nintendo. So I've had a PS4 for a year and a half now. It's been great. You get twice the Nintendo Directs when you have that because you can watch their State of Plays, which are the same exact thing. So if you're disappointed by a State of Play, then you have a Direct in a couple of weeks to look forward to, and vice versa. So just helps fill in some of those gaps when you look at everything that you have to play, not just what's in the works.
Yeah, certainly, and with Steam also. And if you want to get maximum coverage with only two systems, I would highly recommend going Nintendo because Nintendo has the first party games and you can't get those anywhere else. And then going with a good gaming PC,
Sure.
You don't even need a super high end one. I think mine initially costed like $650 to assemble myself, and I later upgraded the graphics card because I was using a hand-me-down one.
Okay.
But yeah, so and that's over a period of time, and I used my tax rebates for that mostly.
Nice.
But
yeah, and Epic Game Store is a Steam competitor that gives away free games all the time. So I'm amassing a collection on Epic Game Store. I don't have a computer good enough to play the games yet, but maybe someday I will. So that's a great alternative. And a lot of what you'll find on Steam and Epic Game Store are the popular indies that also come to Switch. So that's a great alternative.
I know a few of the games that we've actually reviewed for the channel, we didn't actually get the Switch version. We got the Steam version. So which is always kind of tricky because it's how do I review this? I can't mention any bugs or anything because that may be platform specific.
Yes, you review it with full disclosure.
I don't think I did that for the one that I have on Steam.
Really?
I think I've only done one Steam game review personally, but I know the rest of the team has done a few.
TBC is a fraud.
But what I would say about managing expectations is do not fill in the blanks. Do not make assumptions because I see that's what people do is they hear something and they extrapolate on it, and so they say what in the case. Okay, I'll give a classic example: Pikmin 4, and everyone's like, "Oh, Pikmin 4, it's in the works. Nintendo's working on it. We just it's probably having a troubled development. We just don't know what's going on with it." And it's do we actually know if Pikmin 4 is in development? Because when Miyamoto first mentioned Pikmin 4, Hey Pikmin hadn't been announced yet. And then it was announced shortly afterward. And so I don't think I've ever heard a rock solid compelling case that no, Pikmin 4 is actually a mainline entry. There's a part of me that honestly believes that. Well, okay, I don't know for sure, so actually I wouldn't say that I believe one way or the other, but I think it's quite possible he was talking about Hey Pikmin.
Well, Nintendo reps.
And if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments, because I want to believe.
I agree with what you're saying, and Nintendo reps just historically promote the games that are coming out. Even if we see them as side entries or kind of half efforts that don't really satisfy what we're waiting for, Nintendo reps don't talk about the games that way. Hey, Pikmin is coming out. You're going to love it. You want to pre-order it right now. You can get it, pre-download it on the 3DS eShop and let your Pikmin dreams come true. Nintendo reps aren't honest about when they know a game is coming out that isn't going to hit a mainline entry. I mean, their job is to promote it. So I think Miyamoto was definitely talking about Hey Pikmin.
Yeah, and other examples more recently is we've heard a lot of rumors Nintendo's going to have some sort of direct event. As of this recording, I think we had that. Yeah, we mentioned that we had one a few days ago. And so people say, oh, Nintendo's thinking about doing a direct sometime this week. And, everyone's like, oh, finally, it's time for the big full fat Nintendo direct.
Full fat, yeah.
And it's well, no, it's just because they're going to announce something doesn't mean, and it was a partner direct showcase.
Which now means they're stockpiling all their big announcements to launch with the Switch Pro next year in March. That's people's interpretation.
Yeah, and so people keep filling in the blanks, and it's like, no, we only have so much information available to us, and rumors may not even necessarily be good information. So first of all, don't believe everything you hear. And secondly, don't fill in the blanks, okay? Acknowledge the blanks and go, okay, the rumor says that Nintendo might announce something this week. So it could be a partner direct. It could be anything. They could just drop a trailer on on Twitter and be done with it. Or YouTube or wherever they. Yeah.
And remember coronavirus too. I mean, COVID-19 will affect production pipelines for at least a year, and development is not what it used to be when everybody was in the same office. Working from home, I think, is more productive in some ways, but in other ways, I think that we will see releases pushed out for quite a long time.
Yeah, and it's especially from what I understand, that's especially disruptive in Japan because they're kind of their office culture is different. Like here in America, everyone has some sort of personal computer, more or less.
Yeah.
At least everyone who would have like an office job. In Japan, from what I understand, that's not really super common. A lot of people, their only computer that they own is their phone.
Okay, so let's say you ignored all of our helpful advice and you end up disappointed. You watched a Nintendo Direct, your dream character was not announced for Smash Bros. I have a dear friend, Mark, who every time a Nintendo Direct is happening, he wants Geno for Smash Bros. And he finds the pattern in the stars spelling out the fact that Geno is going to be announced, whether that's Square Enix uploading a certain song to their YouTube or colors in the background of a Sakurai video. I mean, sometimes people see what they want to see and they end up disappointed. What do you do at that point?
So is he like the guy with the Pepe Sylvia board in the background, that meme?
Yes, that's actually him. His name is Mark. And I love him, but I feel bad for him when that happens because it's a long shot every time.
Well, as we've already stated, prevention is the best cure. So, number one, don't get your hopes up. Pay attention to what has been announced and what has been stated, and take it as literally as possible. Secondly, we've already touched on this. If nothing interests you, remember what you have. Gaming is it's maturing as an art form, and there's so many things out there so many classics you can go back and check out. Or if you're like us, you probably have a lot of games that you own or on your wish list that you haven't gotten around to yet. So just spend some time enjoying what is already available to you.
Yep. We have an embarrassment of riches with games to play. So I'm down to 7 on my backlog, Glenn.
I wish I could claim that. My backlog has not been going particularly well.
So you haven't been taking this advice this year.
The problem is, one, I have a million other things that I want to do. And the other thing is that whenever I finish one game, I just sort of spend a week debating which is the next game I want to start on.
Really?
It's gotten better because I had a lot of games that I bought a lot of old games I bought with the sole intent of, maybe I could write an article on this. And then I've kind of realized I don't have to write a blog article on, every game I play.
Yep.
So that's been a bit of a weight off my shoulders. And it's like, okay, if this game's good enough for me to write a blog article on it, then I'll talk about it. But
yeah, it's got to earn your time. Well, anything else you want to say on this topic, Glenn?
Well, I guess what I would just say is, lastly, always try to look on the bright side of things. Try to look for the silver lining. just because the big announcement that you wanted wasn't announced, that doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't anything worth paying attention to announced. And on a related note, also understand that you're not the center of the universe. These announcements aren't made specifically with you in mind. So just because you're not excited about anything that's coming out in the near, that was announced, someone else might be. And so, just learn to be happy for other people who are who get something that they can be excited about.
Yes. So, once again, I would like to request from our listeners that they tell us who they are. Make yourself known. If you're listening on YouTube, drop a comment. If you're listening on our website, drop a comment. We'd love to interact with you more and let us know who we're talking to, because sometimes it feels like the void, but you are out there.
Sometimes it's like putting messages in bottles and just chucking it into the ocean.
Yeah. Like in Animal Crossing for the GameCube. I wrote so many of those, and I think they didn't go anywhere. Do you know how that worked?
No, because I don't even remember that feature.
I would spend so much time also just writing letters to my villagers, because I think naive me really believed that they were comprehending what I was writing and that it would improve my relationship with them. So sad.
I think I did that once when the villagers said they might be moving away, and I wrote them a short letter. It's like, I'd miss you if you leave. And they actually, they sent me a response. It's like, oh, your letter was so heartfelt. And it's like, wait, does the game actually know like what to look for to know that I'm trying to be encouraging or something? Like, are there certain keywords? And man, have I always been like a geek that tries to reverse engineer games? Because now that I think of it, that's probably not a normal thought process. Is like, how does the game know?
Not.
Is it responding to that? Is that generic? How does the game know that I'm trying to be nice to this character? Does it look for specific keywords?
If you want to pick up the original Animal Crossing and do some tests and write a blog article, I would not stop you. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, good heavens, no. I don't have that kind of time.
Well, thank you so much for the time.
I don't even play New Horizons anymore.
Yeah.
I never got KK on the island and never got to see the credits.
Boo! Well, thank you for the time that you did spend on the podcast with me today. Very interesting topic, and I appreciate the chat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right,
this is something that I thought was very topical because we've been dealing with a lot of hype and disappointment. So, yeah, hopefully this will help you navigate the rest of the year, because I hate to be pessimistic, but I don't think we're getting a big announcement this year. At least maybe in like December or something. But I think what happened is Nintendo basically cut up their Nintendo Direct, and now they're sprinkling it. I'm not sure sprinkling is the word I want to use, but they're
drip feeding. I don't know.
They're slowly disseminating it across the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Spacing it out.
Well, listeners, now you know all of our tricks. Go out, be empowered, prevent disappointment, and the worst case scenario, the worst thing that could possibly happen is that you're pleasantly surprised by announcements in the future. So, to me, that's a win. Mm-hmm. Enjoy, be surprised, play your games that you own, and we'll talk to you on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye.